Long ago, in a realm far removed from our world, there existed an island that can only be described as magical. The beauty of this island was so mesmerizing that a legend was born that those who are blind, who gaze upon the island, can cure their sight. On this island, you could find all kinds of beautiful, scary, strange, and unknown phenomena never before seen. This island's landscape was truly breathtaking, and within that landscape lived all kinds of beings. However, there were 9 distinct, but still similar species who stood at the top of the island's hierarchy. These 9 species lived in harmony with one another, each contributing to the effort to preserve the magical beauty of the island. And those 9 were as follows. The Slovenians, the manliest and most thick-skinned of them all. The Croatians, the most welcoming and sympathetic of them all. They never once considered violence as a means of achieving their goals. The Bosnians, the healthiest of them all, as well as the most mentally sane. The Montenegrins, the hardest working and earnest of them all, whose summer vacations were the greatest. The Serbians, who are the most spiritual of them all, who enjoy peace and stability. The Romanians, the fairest and most frugal of them all, who swore off all crime and sin. The Bulgarians, the happiest and most positive of them all. They never once held a funeral, because they never died either. The Greeks, the wisest of them all, whose knowledge extended to all corners of known existence. The Albanians.
Let's get down to business.
They... Most unusual, but look, who cares? The island's inhabitants were living their best lives, and each day was a blessed one. However, one of those days, Monday in particular, would prove to be the last they would share together. On that Monday morning, one cloud, just one little cloud would appear above the clear skies of the Balkans. And within the matter of seconds of it appearing, the cloud rapidly spreads, and by the time everyone took notice of the situation, the entire sky was blackened. The Balkan meteorologists only had a few moments to examine this new phenomena, as the very next moment, the ground beneath started to shake. People hid under tables, ran out of their houses in the open, held each other tightly together, as they waited to see what would happen next. And then, out of nowhere, a bright flash of light had blinded everyone. The ground had stopped shaking, and the black cloud that had covered the whole sky had disappeared as well. Once the Balkaners had stopped hiding and clutching to each other, they came to a slow and hard realization. The sky was not the same shade of blue as it was. The air didn't smell the same. Neither did the water taste the same. And neither did the sun shine the same. As days went by, the news had come from the edges of the island. Or rather, what once was an island, now a part of an unknown land with unknown phenomena. This revelation sparked all kinds of reactions from the 9 peoples. However, it didn't really matter what they thought of their sudden change of scenery, as it would soon prove to be the last of their worries. The new world to which they have been transported to was slowly beginning to find its way to the Balkans. And as they did, the catastrophes would soon follow. The first of them would come from the east. Upon the banks of the eastern part of the former island was the great trade city of Constantinople. The city, having found itself no longer facing the open waters of its past world, now faces the coast of a new world and its inhabitants. And those inhabitants were the Turks. The Turks were a peoples that are so obviously not like the Balkans, which is why I have excluded them from the popular kids table. The Turks at the time, and indeed now, are simple people, only interested in 2 things: material possessions and gay porn.
Oh, I love these videos so much. Where's the men kissing? Where's the men?
Their daily activities consisted of arguing and wasting time. When the Turks saw the opulent riches and amazing lives of the Balkans' inhabitants, they wanted it for themselves. They would end up launching a widespread invasion of the Balkans, and with it, forever broke the harmony of the Balkans. The Turkish invasion would prove to be a wake-up call for the Balkans, as they were no longer going to be able to rely on the usual routine of enjoying each other's company, and would now need to fight to even attempt to go back to a semblance of their old lives. And so, the Balkans would unite, throwing away all differences in order to fight off the oncoming onslaught. They pulled together all of their resources, and after what would prove to be a long war, they prevailed. Turks were mad, but nonetheless chose to retreat.
For now.
The news of the war spread throughout the New World, along with the knowledge that there was now a new patch of land. The war had shown to this new world the new types of tools and weapons that they have never seen before, and much like the Turks, they too desired them. However, one group desired these riches of the Balkans far more than any other. The Jews. The Jews have spent a sizable amount of their history being persecuted, and once they saw that the Balkans had what they wanted in order for them to escape their persecution. However, it would not be the Jews who were next in line to try their hand against the Balkans. Those would be the Germans. These Germans, although more advanced than their other counterparts from this new world, they, much like their counterparts, were completely depressed. This came from them lacking both great music and cuisine that the Balkans had. So Germans, like the conquerors that they would prove to be sometime in the future, they decided to invade the Balkans. However, unlike the Turks, they would prove to be a much more tougher opponent. The German tactics, as well as the outright scary sounding sounds and howls that they so blatantly call a language, were a tough obstacle as the battle raged on, and neither side showed signs of slowing down. A third party was looking for a way to enter the battle as a kind of a wild card. Enter France, the home of snail pasta and prostitution. At the time of the Balkan arrival, the French have been going through a bit of a turmoil themselves. You see, they had just come out of a famine, their queen had accidentally gotten stuck in a guillotine, and unfortunately there was no stepbro who could save her. The government of the newly declared 109th French Republic knew that they needed to do something, both to unite the nation and to rebuild it. Therefore, they conjured a great plan to invade not only the Balkans, but the Germans as well. Immediately, the three sides entered into kind of a stalemate. The battles were fast, hard, and costly, and worst of all, they were many. There was no end in sight to all the fighting. It was in the midst of these battles that the group I had previously mentioned saw their opportunity to make their debut. The Jews knew that this was their opportunity to enter the battle, but just how would they do it, since they had no army? They came up with a devious method, manipulation, and the target of their manipulation would be the Turks. They would secretly manipulate the Turkish elite in order to push the Turkish nation ever closer to joining the battle. For this trick, they utilized the dark magic of the secretive organization known as the Hebrew Israelites. These wicked sorcerers casted their spells onto the Turkish Sultan and had him order his army to enter the war so that the Jews could not only take over the Balkan territory, but take the technology and knowledge, as well as the culture, of its peoples. Turkish army would enter the battle, but unlike the last time where they only faced the Balkan armies, this time around, they would face 3 opponents. The Jews saw that their Turkish puppets weren't enough, and so they had their Hebrew Israelite sorcerers cast more powerful spells onto both the Germans and the French. As the sorcerers gathered and made their preparation for the spell to activate, way down within the Arabian desert, a man of legend had awakened from his slumber. He sensed the immense accumulation of energy gathering in the northwest. The mighty alchemist Yaqub had awoken. Yaqub had spent the better part of known history attempting to bring the world into the new age. He knew that although the Jewish people deserved a better future, they shouldn't have steeped to that level as to steal from others. Yaqub was always aware of the flaws of the Turkish, the Germans, and the French, as he wasn't surprised one bit of their incompetence and stupidity. However, even Yaqub had struggled with comprehending the Balkans. Never before had he seen a group so harmonious prior to his recent awakening. Therefore, he knew that he must do something. He had to prevent the Jewish sorcerers from harming the Balkans at all cost. Now that he had discovered a model for what the future would look like, his dreams were within sight. So, he resorted to creating a weapon unlike any seen before. The weapon intended to reconstruct the biology of the human body in order to make its victims permanently disoriented and devoid of any of their previous cultural practices. This weapon would come to be known as the White Bomb. As Yaqub was taking his preparations, the Balkans were being put under increased pressure. The Germans, the French, and now the Turkish, all under the control of the Jewish Hebrew Israelite magic, launched their combined assault. And just as the troops were about to cross above the skies of the Balkans, Yaqub showed up with a jetpack, and in his hands he carried a bomb. When everyone looked up to the sky, the white blast of the bomb spread throughout the European continent. And as it did, all of its inhabitants felt its effects. Their skin turned brighter, and their sense of awareness was shaken. All of a sudden, all of the many ethnic groups that inhabited the European continent just became the white people, while the Turks, having only been slightly caught by the blast, and only some of their people turned white. The Jewish plan of liberating themselves from others' oppression by taking the treasures of the Balkans had now failed. Yaqub was initially quite pleased with the weapon. He thought that he had saved the Balkans, and that now he could descend to the ground to work with the Balkans to achieve his desired future. But that wasn't the case. Yaqub was shocked, for he had failed to foresee the effects of the white bomb on the Balkans. The weapon originally designed to work on those from the European continent, or at the very least on those from this world. But the Balkans were neither. Unfortunately, the byproduct of this miscalculation would result in the near complete destruction of the Balkan harmony. As opposed to working with each other to fight off the invaders and working with each other to uplift one another, they have now turned on each other. Yaqub was crushed, for he had destroyed that which had given him hope. The French had, since being exposed to the bomb and becoming white, become kinda retarded.
Bonjour mademoiselle, je proclame notre soleil, je veux m'en venger, merci beaucoup, je hurle, oui baguette, bisous.
They became addicted to cigarettes and eating snails. Somehow, being aware of their sudden change in skin, the French have, well, made many attempts to unwhite themselves. One of those allowing multiple immigrants from multiple different countries and cultures to enter France.
And we know how that went.
It is something that the Germans would also attempt to do, but as a result of their attempts, they started such fun events as World War I and World War II. On the other hand, the Turks that had turned white sought out to move to other countries where they thought that they now belonged, while their countrymates who didn't remained their old selves. And then there were the Balkans. Now nothing more than a shell of what had once been. The 9 peoples now became almost unrecognizable. The Slovenians lost almost all of their masculinity and now became known as the femboys. The Bosnians lost all of their sanity and the life expectancy dropped to about 45. The Montenegrins became incredibly lazy and every summer their country would randomly burst into flames. The Serbians had gone from being extremely spiritual to being absolute hypocrites in that they engage in all kinds of sin while preaching religion. Romanians, who once knew only fairness, now only know of schemes and petty theft. Bulgarians, once happy as a crackhead on a high, now became as depressed as an antisocial Russian who reads Dostoevsky and Tolstoy novels. The Greeks, who espoused wisdom, now became as dumb as Bosnians and basically forgot everything about their, history. If you want proof, Greeks recently discovered ancient ruins underneath a place where they planned to build a train station. And the Albanians,
What is this rizzy blood doing on the calculator? Is blood Einstein?
well... Yeah, they didn't change much. In retrospect, it truly is a tragedy what happened to the Balkans. Once a great and united group of peoples, now reduced to sitting at the weird kid's table. Now don't get me wrong, I don't blame the Jews for their actions. The truth is that any other group of peoples in their situation might have done the same. And as for the Yakub, it is said that he still resides somewhere within the Balkans. Perhaps a system of underground caves somewhere, or just somewhere in Serbia, who knows, still conducting his experiments in a never-ending attempt to reverse the damage of the white bomb. In all honesty, who knows what the future holds for the Balkans? The reality on the ground is such that most Balkaners had already forgotten about their rich history. But even in the thick fog and the smog-covered skies, deep within the bottles of rakia, or tsuika, or palinka, whatever you want to call it, I truly do believe that there still lies the great spirit of the Balkans. The spirit that yearns to return this great island to its former glory. The spirit that in spite of all the hardships that the Balkans had endured, keeps on fighting no matter what. To this day, the Balkans remain one of the most beautiful and greatest places in the world, and the closest thing to heaven that there is. Long live the Balkans!